What's up, guys? This is Carl at Rare Candy, and today I have rather, a really special guest. This is an interview that I've been looking forward to for some time, and I think a lot of you have been looking forward to something similar to this. Today, I have with me Justin Bokhari, who's been a really great player for a really long time. Now, obviously, over the weekend, Justin had a really, really good run at Knoxville Regionals, and I was really hoping to get him on for a player interview just to pick his brain about how the day went, how the format looks, how to improve, the things that I'm known for producing here on the channel. So I'm really happy to have Justin here with me today. Now, Justin has 20 plus regional day twos, countless cup wins. He's played in Worlds for a number of years now in a row, and he'll continue to do so. However, Justin got his first regional top 8 this weekend, and he went 8-0-1 on day 1 at Knoxville and was the number 1 overall seed heading into day 2. So it's been really great to see such a consistent player who always shows up in day 2 finally break through and get to his day 2. And today we're going to pick his brain and just kind of talk about the run, talk about how he's gotten to this point, how it felt to finally achieve that goal, what it took to get there. So I'm really excited to introduce Justin Bokhari to all of you for one of the first times, I think, in internet history. Here we are. So Justin, man, how's it going, dude? How are you feeling? Talk to us a little bit about where your head's at after last weekend.
Hey guys, so it feels pretty good. It's been a while. I didn't think this would ever come. I was joking around with some of my friends that maybe I'll top 8 next century or something like that. So it felt pretty good. Still feels good. Kind of bittersweet because I feel like I could have done a little bit better because I made a slight mistake in my top 4 match that I think ended up costing me. But we could get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, cool, man. I mean, I was one of the people in the Twitch chat who started the whole Bokhari gang movement, and it was really great. I mean, without being there, man, I think it's hard to see how many people were like just really excited for this whole thing. And I think that your story in the trading card game, to some of your friends like me, it's just been a thing to follow and like a thing to like care about, and like to see that story kind of get rewritten this weekend. I think it gave us all like just a big boost, especially me. Like I was hitting you up, I was hyped about it, and I'm just extremely excited about that kind of thing. And it's a good indicator that if you just plug away at what you like and what you're good at, eventually things are going to go your way. And I know that you don't get to this point without having a lot of experience in the game. So, I mean, obviously you and your brother have been great players for a long time, and I kind of just wanted to delve a little bit into a little bit of your history, when you started, why you've kept up with it, things you like about the game, things like that. So when did you start playing?
Okay, so I think we started. Wow, it's been a long time. Might have been 2007. My brother and sister ended up bringing home, I forget what it was. It might have been a starter deck or something, and they wanted to learn how to play. So I said, sure. I ended up learning the rules and teaching them how to play, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And it also allowed me to kind of connect with my brother and sister. Since there's kind of a little bit of an age gap, I'm 5 years older than my sister and 8 years older than my brother. So it gave us some way to kind of connect otherwise how we might not have been able to. So we ended up getting into the game like that, and we started playing at home a little bit. And then we went to our local card store, which is not there anymore, but we went there and we had some of our friends go there. We kind of just started playing. And then eventually we went to our first state championship, I think in 2007. And then from there we went to one regionals. And then we were like, okay, maybe we found the game pretty fun and we thought this was really interesting, the competitive aspect. So then we decided the next season, so 2007, 2008 season, that, hey, maybe we should just try to go for whatever this world championship thing was, because we weren't too familiar with it at the time, right? So that year, all of us ended up saying, okay, let's go for it. And we all ended up getting our invites, and we kind of just jump-started from there.
Okay, great. So going back, what is it, 12 years now? That's a long time. And I mean, you guys have done a lot of stuff in the game since then. Why would you say you've kept up with it for so long? Because like I don't I don't know exactly how old you are, but I mean, starting when you're 12, 13, like an early teen to now, like what is it about the gaming community that has caused you to keep playing for so long or just keep getting better and better and better?
Well, ended up taking a 3-year break when I went into college, and I wasn't planning on coming back at the game at the time. I was like, okay, I'm going to take the break here. I might not come back. But then my brother was the only one who really kept playing. My sister kind of stopped playing around that time too. So I would keep up with the game with my brother. I'd help him like make his decks and stuff at the time. And then I think it was 2015. I think my brother needed help to start going to events because originally our grandma and aunt and my grandpa used to take us, and so he needed some help to get to Worlds that year, and I decided to go. I think this was the Boston year, so I ended up taking him to Worlds that year, just me and him. And I decided, oh, hey, the game is. I started playing again. I think I played in the Open, and I was like, oh, hey, the game still pretty similar. It seemed fun, so I said maybe I'll get back into it. So I decided to get back into it, and also some of the familiar faces I had before I took my break were still there, and that's probably the biggest reason I would say is that just the community. The community has always been great, always been supportive, always been nice to me and my family, and probably without that, I wouldn't have come back, and my brother probably wouldn't have been playing for as long as he did either.
Awesome. It's really nice to hear about how the community kept somebody in, like the player retention due to the community being supportive and nice. And I know that there are like darker sides or darker shades of the community that kind of overpower like the continuity of like how nice and the community is overall. But it's really great to hear that whole story. And you've been around for a long time. You've done a lot of good things in the game, and it's great to hear that having friends and familiar people is what kept you around. And now we're here, and now we're getting better and better and better all the time. So at Atlantic City, you bubbled out of top eight.
Yeah.
Uh, how did that feel?
Well, at the time, I think I ID'd around 14. So I got to kind of walk around and kind of figure out my resistance myself. So as I was walking around, I started just keeping up with all the opponents I had played day two, and I started to figure out that it was most likely looking like I was going to be the one who bubbled. So I kind of preemptively knew. So it wasn't that much of a shock, I should say, that when I saw ninth. When I saw it, it was obviously initially like, oh wow, but I like kind of pre-prepared for it because I was just looking around and I started calculating my own resistance, and it looked like I was going to get ninth. So like as I was calculating it, I was like, wow. And even like after the tournament, I was like, maybe I could have just played round 13 or 14. So I was a little bit upset at the time, but I just said, okay, we just move on from it and then try to use it as, I guess, motivation or fuel to try to not get put in that position again, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, you started out 3-0 on day two, right? And then ID'd twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that because you started your day with a win over
Yeah.
somebody
Sorry
familiar.
from there. Yeah.
So mentioned it on my own podcast a few times, but Justin has had my number this year, and it hasn't been pretty. So I guess he does owe me this interview. But anyway, um,
Our game was, from what I remember, really close, both games.
they were something.
Yeah.
They were something. And honestly, man, that being my first taste of day two ever, after kind of being like a junior version of you, coming close and close and close for a long time and doubting myself, and we've had conversations about this kind of thing, and then finally getting there, and then okay, great, like this is my first exposure to a day two opponent, and it's you, and it was motivating. It wasn't discouraging. It was like, okay, like this is what it's going to take. So, kind of in a weird way, kind of paralleling like what you were able to do this weekend, like just working at it and plugging away. And once you got to top eight, I mean, we're going to talk about it later, but I'm sure that just felt entirely different from like Swiss rounds on day one. And we'll talk about that later. But anyway, so you bubble ninth at Atlantic City. You figure it out. Maybe you could have played. It happens, right? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts leading up to Knoxville at that point? Do you have a sour taste in your mouth? What are you thinking? Like, should I change decks? What I want to hear your thought process about why you stuck with the same thing.
Okay, so going into Knox, I wasn't sure what I was gonna play, to be perfectly honest. Usually after regionals, I like to give myself like maybe like 1 or 2 days, sometimes a week, to like just decompress from Pokemon. Because leading up to an event, you usually like test a lot, or even maybe not even test, but theory a lot. So it's a lot of Pokemon. So I usually like to give myself a little bit of time to decompress. But with Knox being so close, I couldn't really do that. So I started thinking about the tournament, like, I guess right away, like maybe Wednesday of the week before, or right after AC. So just going in, after seeing the results, I figured that either Mew Mew would be probably a big play, and I also thought Pidgey would be big, and I thought people would try to counter it. So going into that week, the week before, there was a weekend like a downtime. So though I had a cup that weekend, and I ended up playing Reshi just to see how it ran and how I would feel playing it. I ended up winning the cup I played it at, but I did not like the deck personally. It felt very I guess like linear, and it also felt weird if you missed Welder. Also didn't like the fact that it didn't play Stamp. That was a deck I was considering playing because I thought it had potentially a decent Mew Mew matchup, and you could beat Pidgey if you put a Zubstrika in. But after playing the deck at the Cup, I just didn't like it. So leading up to the event, so this is the week of now of Knoxville, I just kept asking my friends, just give me reasons not to play Pikarom. Just list them for me, and then I'll decide if I want to or not. So people were giving me reasons not to, giving me reasons to. And then eventually I just said, there's no reason not to play this deck. I think I only lost 5 games at AC. So I said, might as well just run it back. And then the night before, I was testing with a little bit with Isaiah Bradner to see if I could change the list at all. And I ended up trying a Lusamine and a Power Plant. The logic was that I could Power Plant against Mew Mew, and so they would counter it most likely with Reset Hole or another counter stadium, and then I'd be able to Lusamine it back and then use it again. Also, with the Lusamine, I could have more Lysander Labs against Guardy and Malamar, but that just ended up being pretty awful, to be perfectly honest, and I just said that it's better just to stick with the same 60 and run it back and see what happens, and so that's what I ended up doing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people had the same thoughts regarding Reshi. Didn't really make a big showing, and it didn't really do well because of you have to run hot, right? And I think that I'm usually one to preach that playing what you know and understanding your deck and like that kind of stuff is kind of what makes. So something I said recently is that the best deck in the format is the deck that you know the best, that's in Tier 1 or Tier 2, where you understand all the matchups. And I think this is a good example of that, where leading up to AC, people kind of slept on Pikarom. Wasn't really talked about. And then there's 3 in top 8. And then there's 4 in top 9, I guess I should say. And then here we are again was there 3 in top 8 again?
Yeah, 3 in top 8. Yeah. Me, John, and Mahone.
Right. Yeah, okay, so I actually had similar thoughts as you as far as Mewtwo being popular and Pidgey being popular. So, I mean, and that's what we saw, right? Like, we saw a lot more players actually playing Pidgeotto than usual, which is kind of weird because it's like touted as a hard deck to play.
Yeah, so going in, I thought Pidgey would be, I guess, popular, but popular for like a Pidgey deck, right? Popular for control. I didn't think it would ever reach like even 5% of the meta. I don't know how many exactly were played at Knoxville, but like my reasoning for how much would be played was it's a good deck, but people usually don't play control. So I was thinking like, so say for example there was 5 in AC, I was thinking at most maybe 25 to 30, but I thought it would do well day 2. So I didn't expect to hit many day 1, but I thought that if I ended up making day 2, I would see a lot in day 2 and maybe 1 in top 8 or top 4 or the finals if I ended up winning. So I wanted to be sure that my deck had a decent Pidgey matchup, and I think Pika does have that. It's close, but I think it has a decent Pidgey matchup. I personally think Pika has pretty like 50-50 to solid matchups across the board. Besides being Mew Mew, I think that's your only like hard unfavorable in the meta, which is like 40-60. It's still close, but I think it's in Mew Mew's favor. But everything else I think is favorable or winnable, I should say, for Pika, as long as you play well and you draw decently.
Awesome. Okay, great. So what I want to talk about now is if you can give me like a brief tournament report. I know we want to talk mostly about day 2 because that's where all the action happened and that's where we finally were able to break through. But anything from day 1 that you want to talk about before we go through day 2 would be great, because it's like it's really interesting to hear about somebody who goes 801. Like that's like almost a perfect day, and it's very rare. So yeah, let's run through the tournament really, not briefly. Whatever you remember that you want to talk about that was interesting, go right ahead.
Okay, so I don't remember much about my first four-ish rounds. I remember that I played a Mally, ended up winning, a Pidgey ended up winning, another Pidgey ended up beating, and then a Greens Reshi, which I ended up winning on stream. So if you guys wanted to go watch that, you guys could. And I remember coming back from lunch break, feeling good, 4-0. I was like, okay, just gotta keep this going. And then I end up hitting a Mew Mew round 5. I was like, okay, I was bound to hit this eventually. I remember I ended up losing game 1, a close game, winning game 2, and then we ended up tying. So I was like, okay, I'll take a tie at this point. And then round 6, I think I hit a Nagquag, and this game was pretty interesting. So going in, I knew that I didn't have Power Plant, and my only non-GX attackers were Coco, Hoopa, and Mew. So like the strategy against Nagquag is to try to knock out a Keldeo with Coco Prism and try to knock out another Keldeo with Hoopa. So that doesn't always work out, obviously. So another thing you can do is just try to rush them and take prizes early before they get the Keldeo out, which is kind of what happened in the one game I played. I was able to take, I don't even remember how many prizes I was able to take, but I don't think I saw a Keldeo. So he either prized his 2 Keldeo, or he was just never able to get it out. But I was able to take enough prizes, and then he ended up doing a play at the end where he cross-divided to knock out Zorora and Pikarom, so to go to 1 prize. But I was just building my hand at this point because I figured that he didn't play Stamp. He had gone through a lot of his deck already, and he just kept letting me build my hand. So I kind of just made a hard read that he didn't play Stamp, and then he did not end up playing Stamp. So I just had the win in my hand after he knocked out both guys. I was just able to use my Tapu Koko and set up another attacker and double custom something on the bench to knock it out. And then game 2, he started Volk Prism, and I ended up going. So I had a Thunder Mountain in hand. So I ended up playing it and attaching a Lightning to Dedenne. I started Dedenne, ended up attaching a Lightning to it and E-powering. So the logic was I did not think I was going to get a turn 1 full blitz, but game 1 I only saw 2 stadiums, so I thought, okay, so maybe he might not be able to counter this. And the other thing was just wanted to take a prize turn 1. So it meant the more prizes you can take before they get Keldeo out, the easier the game is for you, because then you don't have to use Tapu Koko right away or Hoopa. So it just gives you more time to take your prizes, so it makes it easier for you throughout the game. So I was able to take a prize like that. And then I remember that the game just ended up playing out, and that 1 prize ended up winning me the game because I was able to use my Tapu Koko Prism, use all my resources to knock out an Alolan Ninetales, which he ended up playing. He ended up walling me with an Alolan Ninetales, not thinking I could knock it out, but I was able to use the last of my resources to move 3 energies from a Pikarom to a Tapu Koko that I had been holding, making sure I didn't use it because I knew that I would probably need to knock out a Keldeo or an Alolan Ninetales, which I didn't know he played. Oh, I think I did know he played after game 1. I don't remember, but I just ended up using it to knock out the Alolan Ninetales and take my last prize. And if I hadn't taken the prize turn 1 with the Dedenne, I think I would have been a prize short of winning that game. So it ended up working out that I was able to take the prize turn 1. So then round 7, I played a Reshi, which ended up beating. And then round 8, I played Michael Catron in a very interesting game with Mally. So I find Mally to be a pretty close matchup. So when I tested a little bit with Kian Amini, when we tested that matchup, we found that it's really important for Pikarom to take a prize turn 1 if you can, because it would just set Mally back. Maybe they missed the turn 2 attack, and it just puts you ahead in the prize trade too. So I wasn't able to do that either game, unfortunately, but we were still able to get there. So I remember the first game, I started Hoopa, Tapu Koko on bench. He went first. He had Jirachi active. I did his turn. I do my turn, and I just end up smacking the Jirachi for 50 because Katron was smart, didn't overflow his bench with abilities with Ditto or anything, so I couldn't knock out the Jirachi turn 1. And then the game just kind of played out from there, and it got to the point where it was 3 prizes, and I had a Dedenne with 40, and a Pikarom with some damage, not that much damage, so it wasn't super relevant, and I think Zorora and a Mew active. He had a board of Tina, a couple Mallies, that Jirachi that still had 50, and I think that was it, and a Lunala Prism. So I know at this point it's my turn, and he has a Shrine active. So I know that I have to get my last Lysander Labs to counter his Shrine so he can't go Espeon Deoxys the next turn to win. I think he had 2 prizes. It was 2 to 3. So I go Cynthia. I was able to hit the lab, which was good. I still had the Dedenne to use, but it was good to hit it off the Cynthia. I counter his Shrine, and then I use my Mew to knock out that Jirachi that I had, put 50 on from turn 1. So now it's 2 to 2. He goes, knocks out the Mew. Then I go, send up my Dedenne, double E-Power, Tingly Return to put the Dedenne back into my hand so that he can't use Esper or Espeon to win the next turn. So now my board is a Pikachu with like 20 damage and something else, something irrelevant that he can't knock out. So I have 1 prize at this point, and I know that there's no way he can knock out anything. So I know he's going to just send up Espeon, smack me, and thinking I can't knock it on and just hoping I don't have double custom. But I was just kind of building my hand at this point, and I just went double custom next turn to win. So that game was really close, but we ended up getting there. And then game 2 was also really close. I remember that it got to the point where this was another game where it was 3-3 in prizes. His board is Mally, Mew, Jirachi, Mimikyu active. And he just used Mimikyu to put 180 on my Zorora. So now I have 180 Zorora, a Pikachu with some damage, Jirachi, and Dedenne. So I do my turn. I'm just thinking, okay, what is my win condition here? I'm just looking at the board. I was like, okay, so I think the only way I can get out of this is to pass, to let the Zorora get knocked out, to put him down to 1 prize. And because his bench is locked, he won't be able to do any big damage last turn to take the prize card. And then on my turn to go stamp to 1, knock out the Mew, and then set up for tag boat with Pikachu and saying if he doesn't get the other Mew or a way to take a prize card, I just win the next turn. And that's exactly what happened. I passed. The Zorora got knocked out. He did his turn. I knocked out Mew, stamped him to 1. Off his stamp to 1, he ended up hitting, I think, Viridian and something else, retreated into Jirachi, Stellar Wished, did not, I got a Cynthia off the Stellar Wish, and then he ended up Cynthiaing into a Switch and 5 energy. So I got a little lucky there that he ended up Cynthiaing into that. But he had played a lot of supporters, so I didn't think he would hit a supporter, but we got a little lucky with that one. So that was a pretty interesting game there. And then round 9, I played against a Mew without custom catcher, and I knew he didn't play custom catcher going in, so it just made things a little bit easier how I could switch around my attackers, especially with Mew, so he couldn't Venom Shot my bench. So I was able to pull that one out. So after that we were 8-0-1, and I think I only lost 1 game too. I lost to the Mew round 5. So outside of that, I think I 2-0'd everything else. So it's feeling pretty good.
Wow. I want to talk about day 2, but your story just now reminded me. So in our game in day 2 of Atlantic City, you were going first and you just passed. And I was like, oh boy, like here we go. And now you described doing that again. Like you described passing to set up a play for later. Is that something you do often, or like what is the science behind that? Like it like once is a coincidence, right? But like a couple times now is a trend. And I've heard of you doing that before from other people. Is that something? Can you talk about that a little bit when playing Pikachu?
Sure. So I guess I remember the time you were talking about. I ended up passing because my hand, when I played you, this was Guardian versus Pika, because my hand was just good enough to play from the hand. I know Guardian by nature is a slow deck, so I didn't expect you to get the turn to attack, right? So I said I could just sit here, attach, and just hold my hand. Because I didn't want to play anything that I might need later. I had a lot of good cards in my hand. There was no reason for me to play labs or my supporters or anything like that because I might need those later when you stamp. All I need to do is attach energy and then wait for my turn, and then I can attack you. So I usually like to evaluate the situation and then figure out if I want to pass. With the Katron situation, I knew that his bench was locked, so there was no way he could knock me out if I passed. So I just wanted to pass and then put him down to 1 prize, which would make my stamp stronger, and then it would give me a better chance to win. So if I attacked his Mimikyu, then with a labs in play, because I had a labs, I just played a labs, then he could just go and Espeon Deoxys and knock out 2 things. He could knock out Jirachi and Zorora. If I had countered the Shrine and passed, then he could just sit there and use Mew and then make me stamp him to 3 instead of stamp him to 1. So I wanted to make sure he got stamped to 1 and setting up for the knockout next turn with the full blitz into a tag boat. Other situations, I usually just kind of evaluate the board and say, okay, if I pass here, Does it give me a better chance to win? Because sometimes just attacking doesn't like give you the best chance to win. It will put your active in a disadvantageous position. Could set you behind in the prize race. Because just passing and trying to set up for your combo turn is okay. Like you want to map out the prizes with Pikaram. You have to figure out, okay, what is the most efficient way I can take my 6 prizes here, and then just try to go that route. You just don't want to try to take a prize to take a prize, so to speak.
I just thought that was like super impressive. And I'm not like I understand why, but I just remember that that really sticks out from our game, and I thought that was something that was not something that everybody would do. So then, when your next turn started, and I think you got a full blitz or something like that, like you had a great second turn, and I remember thinking like, okay, well, I got a lot of work to do now. Um, I just remember thinking that no one's ever done that to me before, and it really made me think like a lot. And ultimately, I lost the game because you made a great play with a Bills for like a mega reach into your deck to get a knockout, which was really good. But anyway, I want to talk about day 2 of the tournament. You described a lot of really great matches on day 1, and you basically dominated everybody. So going into day 2, you're 801. What are you thinking, and how does it go?
Okay, so going into day 2, I knew I was either gonna play Jimmy, Pendarvis, Azul, or Grant. Those are the only 3 people I could play. So I was like, okay, gonna start off no matter what against a hard matchup. Pidgey, I thought was okay, and then Azul and Jimmy were obviously Mew Mew. So I was like, any matchup is gonna be like difficult, and so I was like, all right, whatever happens, happens. So round 10, I hit Jimmy playing Mew Mew. He was playing a little bit different than Danny and Azul. I think he ended up dropping the bikes for some other techs to give him a better shot versus Guardy. So it made my matchup slightly better because he didn't have as much reach. But I remember I ran pretty hot in this set. So game 1, he goes first, starts reset hole, kind of just does his thing, gets sets up. And then I get a turn 1 full blitz, ended up knocking out the reset hole. And I think I put the energies on Choo Choo. Raichu GX. And then he does his turn, gets a tag purge. And I remember I retreated into Dedenne, smacked his Mewtwo with the Dedenne for 50. So he does his turn, tag purges my Dedenne for 120. So I'm looking at the board now, and I said, okay, I can smack this Mewtwo again for 50 to put it at 170. And then next turn, I can go double custom, tag bolt, Dedenne and this Mewtwo. Also make me less susceptible to Stamp. And I think he had gone through 2 customs at this point with the Dennes, just had to burn them. So like it might be unlikely that he is able to double custom my Pikaram on the bench and knock it out. That had 3 energies that I used to get the turn 1 full blitz. So I said, okay, I think this is my best route to victory. So I decided to set up that play. I go 50 again to the Mew Mew and to put it at 170 left. So now it's Jimmy's turn. He knew I was setting up this play. I think I had 6 cards in my hand, and I had the play in my hand. He ends up stamping me to 5. And after stamp to 5, I get Thunder Mountain, Volkner, Switch, something else, and something else. 2 irrelevant cards. And then he does his turn, tag purges, knocks out my Dedenne. I sent something up. I forgot what I sent up. And then I drew for my turn. I drew Dedenne. So I was like, okay, I have the attack right now if I just get a custom catcher off my Jirachi that I had on the bench. So I ended up retreating to the Jirachi. Well, I think I top decked the Switch. That was it. I top decked the Switch and I had Dedenne in my hand because I would have sent up Jirachi, I think, if I knew I had the Switch. So I ended up sending up the retreating to Jirachi Stellar Wish, ended up missing the custom. So then I switched into the Pikaram, played the Thunder Mountain, and just Dedenne into to try to hit this combo, right? I ended up missing it. I think my deck was pretty small at the time. I had double custom and I still had a Volkner left. So if I was able to hit custom or Volkner after the Dedenne or just hit a custom off the Stellar Wish, I could have Volknered in my hand. So I ended up missing the combo, and then next turn he ended up winning. So I was like, wow, okay, that was kind of rough going in, losing the first game, day 2. I was like, all right. So then we just played game 2 and ended up winning because he got a bad start. And then game 3, I forgot if his turn 1 was strong or not, but all I remember was I ended up getting another turn 1 full blitz and kind of just pressured him from there. And then it came down to he stamped me to 1. And off the stamp to 1, I was able to hit a Cynthia and then Cynthia into the cards I needed to win the next turn. But
Awesome.
we got kind of lucky with that first round. And then at this point, we're 901. So like, okay, just got to get, I think, what, two more wins at this point?
2 more.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, just don't screw it up. That's what I kept thinking to myself. I was like, yeah. So then I hit Azul this round, playing his Mew Mew list, same as Danny. And these games, I just think I'm not too sure what happened. All I remember is he was able to get set up and just kind of overwhelm me both games. Both games came down to like me stamping him and him needing to miss his switch after I paralyzed him. And both games he hit the switch. So, but I mean, his odds were like decent. He still had all his customs left to draw cards and some acros left. So I need to get a little lucky, but he ended up hitting the switch, which happens. So that was the first loss. I expected to hit a loss eventually, and to Mew Mew. So I knew Mew Mew was a rough matchup, so I wasn't too upset about that. I was just like, okay, we got to rebound. And then the next 2 rounds, I ended up hitting Pidgey, Isaiah Bradner, and Grant. So ended up winning both those games. The Pidgey matchup I find it to be pretty close. Usually what you want to do is kind of just pressure them and hope that they stumble a bit, because the more you pressure them, the more cards they need to set up their lock right, or just continue to lock you out of the game, I guess. And the match against Isaiah, he ended up getting a bad start game 1. I'm pretty sure he started Articuno, and I kind of was able to pressure him, and he just wasn't able to get set up. And then game 2, I remember that match was really close. I went for a play where I think I tag bolted and stamped him in the same turn, so I went to 1 prize. So basically saying, if you don't get the Articuno here, I win the next turn. And he wasn't able to get the Articuno. I was able to win the next turn. And then round 13 was when I played against Grant. Similar thing happened. That match is on stream, so you guys can look that up. I don't remember all the details in that match. One of the biggest things I do remember is he sent up a Jirachi, and I ended up passing. This is another situation where I passed because I knew he wanted me to knock out the Jirachi, because his bench was Pidgeotto, 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 Absol, and the active Jirachi. So I knew if I knocked out the Jirachi, then he could bench Oranguru and Articuno. But if I left the Jirachi alive, he couldn't Articuno me, because if he Articuno'd me, then he'd bench lock himself, so he couldn't use Oranguru. So I knew that if I just passed, the energies on my active would be safe. So I ended up just passing. And then Grant had to go into Oranguru, and then he ended up going into Oranguru, stamping me to 2, and custom capturing, and just hoping that I didn't draw anything off the 2 cards, because I don't think he was able to get the lock that turn. And then I was able to draw something, and then I was able to just kind of set up my board so he couldn't lock me the next turn. And then game 2, he got a bad start, and I was able to overwhelm him. Against Pidgey, what you want to do too is also make sure what cards they resource management back. Because when they hammer, Volkner, Chip Axe, you kind of know what cards they put back, and you can kind of figure out what they want to accomplish the next turn. So then you can kind of plan your turn, like, how do I want to play any cards from my hand so that I'm increase my chances of drawing something good off Stamp and Chip. Do I want to put more energies on the active because they're less likely to get hammered? Or am I less likely to get Articuno this turn? Because usually when you play against Pidgey, you have to figure out what they're putting back, and you kind of have to figure out what they want to do so you can know what you want to do. Yeah, I definitely don't like playing against Pidgey, but I don't think it's a terrible matchup. And then the next 2 rounds. So at this point, I'm 11-1-1. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, wow, I think I finally did it, but I didn't want to count my eggs before they hatch, so to speak. So I was like, maybe I could still bubble or not. So I just wanted to get that ID to get to 35 to be completely safe. So I ended up tying the next 2 rounds, and we ended up getting there as the number 1 seed. It felt pretty good at the time.
That's incredible, man. So, I mean, that's a murderer's row day 2, honestly. There's no easy games when you go up against Jimmy and Azul and Grant and Isaiah and whoever else, right? So you got there, and you're the number 1 seed. So what does that feel like to you? There's no bubbling out. There's no 9th, 10th, whatever. There's no tragic loss at the end. There's no winning in. You're there. You're number 1. What are your thoughts at? How do you feel?
So as soon as that last round, 15, I was like, wow, okay, I'm finally in there. And then I just started thinking to myself, all right, now we got to win this thing. So as soon as I ID'd with John, I just started thinking about who could I play, what were my matchups, and then kind of just playing out different scenarios in my head because I was not satisfied with just top 8, right? I wanted to win the event. I was really happy in the moment, but I was like, I can celebrate this top 8 later. Let's focus on winning the event, and that's kind of where my mind was at.
Awesome. So top 8, you play against Isaiah, right?
Yeah, so a rematch.
Okay. Anything different about this one, or did you just have the plan and you kind of? It seems like you were really well prepared for any Pidgeotto style control stuff, based on your tournament rundown. So, Isaiah, obviously a new master, has been killing it so far.
Yeah, he's been
But
doing really well. Really good player.
I think we all saw that coming.
Yeah.
So you're going into this, you have the mindset of somebody who is going to win an event, right? Like, I'll celebrate later. It's business time. I'm not satisfied. That's like a champion's mindset, right? So tell us about the top eight match and how it went, and did it go the same? How was it? How did it feel? How'd it go?
All right, so going into top 8, I just was thinking to myself, don't like make this any bigger than it has to be. It's just like another match, right? So I sat down, got ready to play, and then the game kind of played out how it usually does. Isaiah was able to get set up game 1, and I just went for the same strategy I usually go for, just kind of be aggressive. And then I think there was one turn where I ended up stamping him and using tag bolt, and basically said that if you don't get the Articuno this turn, I'm going to win. Because I didn't want to go full blitz at 2, and then go full blitz to put me at two prizes, because he could just go Articuno, lock me at 2 prizes, and then I might never get to tag boat. So I usually like to tag boat at 3 prizes, because if you go to 1, then you're basically saying, if you don't get this turn, I win. But if you go full blitz and then go to 2 prizes, it gives them more time. They could still hit hammerheads or something like that. It gives them more time to just kind of put you in the lock. I'd rather just put them on give them one less turn. And that's basically what happened. I just went for that play with a stamp and just said, yeah, if you don't get all these cards this turn, I'm going to win. And he ended up missing it by, I think, 1 or 2 cards to get the Articuno. I ended up winning game 1. And then game 1 took about 40 minutes, I want to say. So game 2, he had to take a slightly different strategy to try to aggressively lock me or take prizes. And he ended up missing the chip 1 turn because he had to attack me with Articuno. And then I was able to get the top deck something to get the cards to take the last knockout I needed. Because I still ended up taking, I think, like 4 prizes that game. And I think that's how game 2 ended. So feeling pretty good. Just beat Isaiah. It sucks that I had to play a friend in top 8. Wasn't too happy about that, but happens sometimes. But I was feeling pretty pumped to be in top 4.
Awesome, dude. Cool. So you win. We're going nuts in all different corners of the country, right? Those of us who aren't there, we're freaking out. We're having a blast. Especially me, man. I was having a ball. I had a little drink next to me. I was like, okay, we got this. We're fine. We're in there.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So top 4, tell us about that. Tell us about how that one went.
Okay, so I knew I was playing against Danny, so I was like, okay, Mew Mew, it's gonna be close. Because kind of was going in the mindset, I know how to play this matchup. Let's see what happens. So game 1, he ends up going first, ends up getting set up. Turn 2, I think he ends up getting the double custom Charizard 300 on my Pikarom. So I was like, okay, I'm already behind here. But he ended up having to burn both switch. So I saw a way I could come back. I ended up using a Hoopa. So he ends up doing that turn 2. My turn 2, I end up going in with Hoopa and smacking his Mewtwo for 150. His next turn, he tries to dig for a double custom to try to win with the Mewtwo that has 4 energy and double custom my Raichu and just Macargo it. He misses it. So then I go send up Raichu. I go send up Raichu. He's at 2 prizes at this point. I still have my 6. So my game plan is to knock out his Mewtwo with my Lightning Ride. And then after I Lightning Ride, he would I'm going to stamp him, and then after I lightning ride, if he doesn't hit the double custom because he's down both switch, I'm going to go double custom myself, his Mew on the bench, and then tandem shock it, and then next turn just switch, knock it out. And if he decided to tag purge because he missed a double custom, I could just go tandem shock, do no damage but paralyze him, then go switch, tandem shock again, and then just go E-power tandem shock for 90. So I was like, I knew that that was my game plan. So he went, knocked the guy out. I sent up Raichu. And his hand is pretty big at this point. I think it's like 7 cards, and he has 4 cards in deck. So I knew he just went for the Dedenne to dig for the double custom, and he didn't hit it. So one of 2 things is true. He either has 1 custom in his hand, or both custom are in his deck. So I was thinking maybe I don't stamp him here, because he had 3 Welder in his discard. No bench space to use the Mind Report. Or I think he already used Mind Report Mewtwo too. And he had 7 fire in play. So I was thinking that, and I think he had gone through 4 acrobikes at this point too. So I was thinking that if I don't stamp him, and he has both double customs in deck, or if he has 1 custom in hand and 1 in deck, then he can't Dedenne for it, right? But if I stamp him to a low hand size, then it would just make it more likely that he has both customs in deck so that he could Dedenne for it. Because I knew he had a Dedenne left. So I was just trying to think to myself, what is the best way to make him miss this? And I was thinking about it for like a good minute or so, and I was like, he still has a Welder and he still has a Fire left. If either of those are in his hand, then he can just guarantee the win next turn. So I think what gives me the best odds is just to stamp him and hope that he doesn't get the last Dedenne, or hope that he draws Dedenne and custom so then he can't Dedenne. So I end up stamping him, using Lightning Ride into my Mew, and just saying, if you don't get it this turn, I'm going to win next turn with my double custom on your Mew. And he ended up getting it the Dedenne and then Dedenneing into the double custom. So that was game 1, really close. And then game 2, I end up going first, set up. He sets up a misses a turn 1 purge. So then I go, my turn 2, I go double custom, full blitz onto his Mew, and then put 3 energies on my Zorora. He does his turn, and I think he knocks out the Pikarom. And then I go send up Zorora, knock him out. Knock him out. And then he does his turn, and I think he does 120 to it. I think that it's a little bit fuzzy this game, but all I remember was that he had 2 prizes left, and he had gone through a decent amount of resources, and I had 3 prizes left. So I look at the board, and I was like, okay, I think the way I win this is go stamp to 2, Tingly Return into my Mew, and then make him need switch and double custom off his 1 stamp, off my stamp, and if he doesn't hit it, then I'm going to win the next turn with Zorora. So then that's exactly what I end up doing. I went Tingly Return on his Mew to put 80 on it, because I think I used an E-Power, sent up my Mew, and stamped him in the same turn. So he would have needed double custom and his last switch off of 3 cards and no bench space, so he couldn't Dedenne. So the only way to draw cards was Welder. And he ended up hitting the Welder, but he ended up missing the switch, and I just won the next turn. I didn't want to use Raichu there, obviously, because if I use Raichu and he hit the switch, then he only would have needed an energy to Macargo it. So I wanted to use Tingly Return, because Tingly Return allowed me to send up the Mew, because he had 2 prizes, so he needed the double custom to win that turn. Because he couldn't Venom Shot, obviously, because I had Mew. Mew was MVP in that matchup. It saved me a lot. It just stops the Mew from being able to use Venom Shot, right? Because Mew likes to set up plays where they just set up checkmate with Venom Shot, but Mew kind of stops that. So we were able to win that game. And then game 3, this is where I made the small blunder that I talked about earlier. So game 3, Danny gets a really slow start. I think he has to Dedenne away a Dedenne and 2 Welder. And then he ends up only getting an attachment for turn, so he misses the turn 1 Welder and had to pitch 2 Welder and Dedenne. So I'm thinking, okay, wow, all right, he's got a slow start. Let's just try to capitalize. I do my turn, set up. I start Zorora, kind of set up with Pika on the bench attached. He does his turn, ends up turbo striking, and then I draw. So my hand at this point, I think, is Radar, Custom, Energy, Switch, Lysander Lab, and I think that's it. So, and that's it. And I top that Coco Prism. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, wow, I can go Coco Prism, put 2 energies on Pika and Raichu, Radar, counter his Giant Hearth with my lab, switch into the Pika with 2 energy, and then just Dedenne and just try to go for a big pop-off turn right now. So I go Radar, my custom, and my energy, and I'm looking through my deck, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay. End up prizing my other 2 Dedenne.
Oh.
So, well, I should have known that, though. I should have checked turn 1, and I don't even remember why I didn't check, because I usually check. I always check my prizes with my first search, but for some reason, I just don't even remember why I didn't check. Then I could have played that turn completely differently, right? I could have just attached the energy to the Pikarom, pop Coco Prism, put the third energy onto the Pikarom, put 1 on Raichu, Giant Hearth the way the Radar, countered his Hearth with my Lysander Lab, switched, and then custom to draw 3 cards. Instead, I got rid of my only way to attack and my only way to draw cards with my Radar, because I thought I had a Dedenne in deck, and yeah, that was my fault. And then I ended up just draw passing the next 2 turns, and Danny ended up just sweeping me from there. But that's where my run ended.
Oh, that's so heartbreaking, dude. Yeah. And that's kind of a characterization about how some tournaments have gone for you, right? Like, that's probably a similar feeling to like getting 9th a whole bunch of times, or 10th, or having bad resistance, or whatever. What are your thoughts after the whole weekend? What's like how do you feel going forward? Do you think you can win one of these? Like, where's your mind at?
Well, after the top 4, like probably the next 24 hours, I was just really angry with myself. I was like, how could I do that? I might have thrown away a chance, sort of thing. But after, I would want to say like a day and a half, I kind of mellowed out a bit, got over it, and said, okay, that was a dumb mistake. You were there. You could have won the tournament. Just make sure that doesn't happen again, and just use it as, I guess, like fuel for the next one. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think I'm pretty confident. I believe that I can win one of these things. Just got to make sure I don't make any more stupid mistakes, and just go from there.
Dude, you had a heck of a run, man, and I'm super proud of you. So now, a lot of my videos are about how do we improve, and you've been playing the game for a long time, and you started with a starter deck from a card shop that doesn't exist anymore, based on what you told me.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, for those of us out there who are maybe, kind of on the cusp of being good, but can't just channel it consistently or anything really, just how do we get better? How do we advance? What is something that people don't often think about that you think goes a long way in getting better at this? Because we put a lot of time into it, but not all of us could be at the top of the game like you and some of our friends. So if you had any advice for somebody who's trying to take that next step this year, what would it be?
Well, I would say one of the major things you could do is just to play, right? You're not going to get better unless you play a decent amount. I remember when my brother, myself, and my sister first started, we played a lot, and that's how we kind of learned the mechanics and the basics of the game. And after you learn that, you kind of can just springboard from there. Once you get the basics and the mechanics down, I think it's very easy to just start picking other things up and kind of just adding on to what you already know. Also, just good to check out resources like the Rare Candy or someone's PC or any of our Team Rocket's Hideout, a new website that produce quality articles that you could just go learn information, just kind of absorb as much information as you can, because that goes a long way into just building the foundation. I think the biggest thing is just building a foundation, and like anything you do, whether it's academics, sports, or even Pokemon, right? It would all start from the foundation, and then from the foundation, you can just build upon that and just keep adding to it until you get to the level everybody wants to get to, right?
Awesome, man, and that's something that I'm gonna take to heart, because you've always been very nice to me since I met you, and I know I haven't been playing for a long time, but you've always been very welcoming, and you've always answered my questions, and I appreciate that about you. And that advice is something that any of us could apply to. You set a solid foundation, you build on it every day, you play, you absorb what you can, you try to talk to people who are better than you. You never get too cocky, right?
Yeah, I always just try to stay like in the moment. Don't, even when you win, even when you lose, don't try to get too high, don't try to get too low. It's usually like how I like to approach it. That way, each win and each game usually just stays the same. Nothing gets too high, nothing gets too low, nothing gets too big. So everything can be thought of as the same, sort of. I know like not every match is the same, obviously, but if you just keep the mindset that, hey, this is the same as just playing at my local league, then the moment or the situation won't feel too big, and you can just treat it as any other game.
Mm-hmm. That's a really measured approach, man, that I think helps you pretty much anywhere in life. So that's super helpful, and it's really good to get a reminder of that kind of thing sometimes, especially from somebody who's just been trending up forever and who's a very recognizable name, and who we finally have some feedback from and an interview from. So I'm really proud of this hour of conversation that we've had, and I kind of want to give you the floor now to let you shout out whoever's been crucial to this whole journey, all of your experience, everything that you've done. So go ahead and take the next few minutes to shout out whoever deserves it and whoever's helped you and anybody who's in your circle.
Sure. Okay, so I want to give a big shout out to my testing group: Will Jenkins, Isaiah Bradner, Kiana Meany, Kenny Britton, Jonathan Croxton, and Justin Kulas. We started testing at the beginning of the season, and I think we've done decently for ourselves so far, so hopefully we can continue that. Also want to shout out Harris Noor, Will again, Peter Kika, Rahul Reddy, Jose Morero, and Dean Nazam for making the drive there and back pretty broken. It was fun and enjoyable drive down and drive back. Also want to shout out the New Jersey and New York squad for just being homies. Also want to give a shout out for everybody who came up to me or sent me something, a congratulations or anything like that. That was really nice, and I appreciate that a lot. Just also shout out to my brother, sister, my aunt, my grandma, my grandpa, and my family for helping us start me and my brother start, and then kind of helping us continue on to this point. Also want to give a shout out to you for having me on, doing it for all that you do in the community. You do a lot for the community and helping it go places that I didn't think it could go. So a special shout out to you, and I guess that's it.
Thank you, man. It feels really good to be acknowledged for some of the stuff that I'm doing. It's kind of more than a game to me. It's like a vehicle to make us all better and help us all grow. And where are we going to be when we're done playing Pokemon? And that's really important to me. So while I do sometimes meet up with you in a day two, or sometimes at the beginning of a regional, and get a cruel awakening there, there's a lot that goes into this whole thing that I really care about. And players like you, I think, make this whole community better.
Thank you.
And you gave us. No problem, man. You gave us somebody to rally behind. You gave us a story. And I think that when we have a story like that, it's just when it works out, and it hasn't completely worked out yet, but we're getting there. And that kind of stuff gives hope to a lot of people. And it's a really good example of how if you just plug away, if you stay calm, if you understand what's going on, good things are going to happen to you. But it's going to take work, just like you said. So Justin, I'm super proud of this whole interview, man, and I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all of you for watching too. And if you want to support us here at Rare Candy, you can always donate to us or contribute via Patreon, become patrons. Otherwise, you could follow us on all of our social medias. They're all down here underneath Justin's picture and his deck list. That's to my left. Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. You'd recognize me from the Twitch channel as well. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there. Justin,
before we go, could I give one more shout out?
Absolutely, yeah.
Also wanted to shout out Team Rocket's Hideout. It's a new article website. You guys should check it out. I'm writing some articles there when I have some free time, but there's a lot of great writers on there, so you guys should check it out when you guys have some time. It's a great website and great source of knowledge and input into the game.
Yeah, their model is really nice too. You could buy an article for as low as $1 if you want to see some of the things Justin thinks or writes about, or if you liked what you heard today and want to hear more, head over to Team Rocket's Hideout. You could buy content for as low as $1, and it supports them directly, and you get a whole lot from it. You're able to absorb some of that content that Justin kind of endorsed. So, yeah. So for Justin Bokhari, I'm Carl. I really hope you got a lot out of this, and I'm glad that I was finally able to bring you the thoughts and the insight of somebody who's just very kind of his own guy. He's not a rah-rah guy, not going to pump himself up, not going to need to tell you how great he is. Just he gets the job done, and this is what some of the people who are flying kind of under the radar because they're not too active on the internet, this is what they think, and this is how they get better, and this is how they grind, this is how they grow. And I think it was super helpful, even for me. Sitting here listening to it, I feel pretty privileged. So I hope you guys were able to get the same feelings out of that as well. Be on the lookout for me doing a meta forecast coming up for the expanded regionals. Before we go, Justin, what's next for you? What's the next event? What's the next thing?
I think the next event for me is probably Virginia Regionals.
Mhm.
So if anybody's there, just feel free to come up and say hi. Always happy to meet new people. So I guess I'll see you guys there.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about the whole run. We're proud of you. Your Twitch chat's golden child. We love it. The
Thank
dub
you.
is coming. You got it, man. So for Justin, I'm Carl. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. So for him, I'm Carl. Guys, take care. Peace. Thank you.